Hey, what's going on, everyone?
The timing.
I know,
the
right?
perfect timing. That was beautiful.
Welcome to another edition of Titan Talk. I'm Isiah, Kilgoon with me as usual, and we brought in Clumsy with us because
what's going
for
on?
those of you who may have hopped into the flash test yesterday, you may have noticed there's a lot of interesting item and god balance coming into open beta.
I'm just saying, the
9.
chefs don't stop
Spoilers?
cooking.
I know,
We're
right?
spoiling ourselves
I
with
know,
flash
right?
tests.
It's all good though.
And yes, the mic works. Hooray!
I know,
yes.
right?
So this is day 2 in the new room. As you can see, it's gotten a little bit better already. Number 1, the audio is better. Number 2, the lighting should be a little bit better today. We do have a little bit of like mood backlighting
right?
now.
Nice.
We still have some
Red versus
decorating
blue
to do. It's
Some
not
decorating, yeah.
It's not perfect yet, but it's gonna keep getting better every day that we're in our new little closet. It's a bigger closet than the old closet,
Yeah.
and we'll keep improving. So yeah, hopefully everybody enjoys the show today, and I will stop talking about the mechanics of the show and we can talk about the mechanics of the game.
You're good. It's important for us to kind of help Chris in this new room. Like you said, we're still kind of getting our bearings here, getting used to things, but it's just going to continue to improve as we keep doing shows over here in the new building.
RGB to change colors.
There we go. Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into Open Beta 9, shall we?
Yeah, sure.
Clumsy, I know this is kind of our third phase in the item specialization pass
That's
that we're
absolutely
doing in
right.
SMITE 2, right? And like I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of changes that players maybe got a little bit of an eye and an early look in the flash test yesterday. But one of the biggest things that we're doing in this pass has to do with penetration. So before we hop in, we're going to bring up a doc and go through all the changes. But Clumsy, I would love for you to talk about, what we're kind of thinking about penetration in SMITE 2 and kind of the overarching changes that we're doing.
Yeah,
here.
I want to double back on that point that you're saying because I think that is really important. And it's something that as we're doing these patches over the course of some time, it's starting to get a little bit lost in the messaging, and I think I just want to hone in on that again and again. Is that when we first started this endeavor in OB7, this was meant to be something that was resetting the item store foundation to make it healthier for the long term of the game. And it's something that we were doing in patches. We didn't have the capacity to do everything at the same time, but 2, it just allowing to do it in batches means that we just could react to player feedback, make sure that we're going the right direction, and we saw constant progress and positive feedback loops each step of the way. This is the end of that arc of item foundation, like creation or resetting, and there will still be more item changes. It's not like we're going to stop cooking or stop doing some spicy stuff, but the goal here is to make sure that we've addressed all the different characters, we've addressed their items, their power scales, their protection scales, and penetration was the last piece in that puzzle. We did a lot of stuff with protections previously, but one of the last things we wanted to do was address penetration, because also not only does that help reset the foundation, but it also goes really hand in hand with the other part that we're talking about of item specialization. Right? Is one of the main mechanics of making sure that penetration was specialized was not just littering it everywhere in the item store. Now I understand there's been some feedback and some, discussion based on previous messaging that we've had in SMITE 1 as well, where one of the opportunities of putting percent penetration and splashing that everywhere means you don't need to think about it as much. There are pros and there are cons, and to each approach. We think it's a lot healthier for the item store and for the game as a whole if you are a little bit more deliberate with your purchasing. There's that item specialization. Yes, that means there's going to be some fallouts of like, hey, they're building 2 tanks or 3 tanks, and the no-brainer play is to go the high percent pen item, of which case if you've got your Ob Shard or your Titan's Bane, and you've got your Totem of Death and your Executioners, and that might just be the right play, and that's okay. Just in the same kind of vein, if someone's going high health, you would go the new Chin Size or Soul Reaver, right? That just makes sense. But now there's an opportunity to say, hey, you know what? They're going for DPS. Maybe that's just the meta has changed. This is where they're going. Or I don't really want to focus on the tanks right now. I'm going to forego those options and build to counter or to specialize against what I want to do in this game. And same thing for the enemy. Maybe you can see as a tank, they're going high penetration, and you could go, okay, well, maybe let me shift into some more health opportunities, or maybe I'll let them do a lot of damage and do something like a Leviathans and reflect it back at them, or Pharaohs or Circes, and like or Jay Scepter to push them away for a time being, right? We want to make sure that the game specialization is key here, and that will allow for a lot more skill expression as a whole. Now, are we going to get all the numbers and the balance right off the bat? Maybe not. People, that's something that we're always going to want to iterate on, and that's something that we're going to want to change over time as well. We don't want to make sure that the game feels too safe or too stagnant. That's just something that's always going to be in flux, and that's a good thing. But this is the end of the item specialization pass in terms of the foundation. the second part of this patch and what we're going to see continuously onwards is making sure that the rest of the items that we didn't touch or any new items that we want to create into the game follow this new mold, this new foundation, and players can expect and understand when we have a new items like, oh, those base stats might be low. Let me have a look at that passive or active effect because that's probably where the power is.
Sounds good. Well, that was a good preface, Clumsy. I'm gonna
that might have been a bit much. But
No,
I'm gonna bring up. Yeah, no, it was great. Yeah, I'll bring up the handy dandy PC, not laptop anymore, and we will bring
you
up.
still gotta say laptop.
Right?
I like it.
My quip.
Your quip, yes. We were joking that we should have a Titan Talk quip pack. You know, like one more question.
I'm still gonna be pushing for that SMITE part.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, we've got item balance up first, and then the item changes are going to be listed into two sections here. First, penetration item changes, then just general item changes for all the other non-pen items. So,
yes,
as Clumsy, you said, we're going to be removing percent pen off of a lot of items, but increasing it, on a couple of items, leading into that more specialization.
Yep, absolutely. So you're going to see basically assume percent penetration is gone from basically every item, and it only will exist on those 4 or 5 last remaining items. Lucerne Hammer. So we also have to adjust the tier 2s here because that needs to be there for the tier 2s as well. Of which case, Evil Eye and Lucerne Hammer both had percent pen. We actually are taking an opportunity here not to just remove the percent pen, but actually do something that we've wanted to do for a while, which is convert these 2 items into tier 2 pure items, kind of like Void Shard is, that means they don't have a tier 1 item. They are just more expensive singular items that can build into tier 3s directly. And Lucerne Hammer and Evil Eye, losing that penetration, will be getting a lot more strength and int in return.
Yeah. And then going on with the tier 2s, Killing Stone going to be decreasing the int and the recipe cost.
Yeah, we wanted to just make sure there's enough of a reason to have a difference between Killing Stone and Evil Eye, both of them being, their tier 2 int components. Lucerne Hammer didn't have that issue as much with Skagox.
Yeah. And then Void Shard, this is an interesting
one.
So
another tier 2 pure item, one of the only ones that actually existed prior. This was the percent pen item.
Yes.
This was the only tier 2 item that you can get, the only component you can get that had percent pen. We already saw inklings of interesting builds occurring in the past where like maybe you'd go 2 or maybe even 3 Void Shards, sprinkling them in because you like that percent pen. This is usually probably in the metas before the last changes of percent pen. But now we wanted to make sure that this isn't the right way, or this isn't some, we don't want you to gamify this. You can only get one, just like it's a unique tier 2 item, just like all the tier 3 is unique. It is the only one, the only tier 2 that is like that. We don't have any other tier 2s, I believe, that are unique.
Yep. And then last up for tier 2, Survivor Sash. This is another now T2 pure that doesn't build from a tier 1, but also has a passive. You gain 25 strength or 35
so
int.
This one's a little bit outside of the penetration stuff, but it's one of the new tier 2s, so it makes sense to put it here, which is we're going to see this effect in a couple of more other items, where it's taking that kind of shift to shield gimmick of you either get one stat or the other, depending on which of one of yours is higher. For all of the ones that have that stat line, and maybe will change in the future, it will default to strength. So if you buy Survivor Sash that has, and you have no other items, because it's based off your item stats, you will just get the 25 strength. And again, that'll be that same caveat for all of them. But you'll see that in a couple more. Plus, I think there was this was pointed out by the community too, but Survivor Sash previously and Fencer's Buckler, I think, were the ones. Those just were tier 2 items without tier 3 items, based on previous item store changes. So the Buckler has now been removed, and Survivor Sash has now been repurposed.
Awesome. All right, well, let's start talking about tier 3s, and let's just talk about the premier percent penetration items going into OB9. Titan's Bane and Obsidian Shard, similar in function, but we're going to be increasing the passive percent penetration from 25% to 35%, and they're both going to be seeing recipe cost adjustments.
Yep, that's right. So we want to make sure that in our last pass of Titan's Bane and Obsidian Shard, we made them a little bit more luxury price, and we gave them some more pen. That was actually the first step that we were going to eventually get here too. We wanted to do that early to make sure that the player base was generally happy with what was going on prior. This is where we wanted to end up being, which is these are the luxury percent pen, high percent pen, not the highest amount of damage items, but they're going to feel pretty good to get regardless because they have that luxury price tag according to them. But if you're going to go these, you're probably not going to get them that early. So tanks also have the opportunity to build into protections a little bit earlier if they want to make sure that, to force you kind of to go into this luxury item path.
Yeah. And keep in mind, right, both of these are actually shattering, correct?
Yes,
so
that's right.
You cannot buy both of them. If you buy both of them, you're still only going to get 35% pen.
That's a good point.
You can only have one 35% pen item in your build. There's just a magical version, and there's a physical, a int version and a strength version. Sorry. Because of shattering, only one of these will work if you buy both.
Yep. Cool. Next up, Totem of Death. It's going to be the int side. Again, another percent penetration item, but we're going to be increasing the intelligence and the cooldown rate. The passive max stacks have also been increased, and the recipe has been increased for the cost.
Yep. So we wanted to make sure that Totem of Death, kind of the equivalent to Executioner, that's going to be seeing some changes as well. Felt pretty good for the opposite case where you're not just trying to get those one-off damage instances of high penetration, but you're going to try and stack that over time.
Yeah.
It's a little bit harder to use that as intelligence users, ability users, more so actually on the ability side, because with basic attacks, you're just the frequency of those are a lot more often.
Mm-hmm.
With wall abilities, the frequency is a lot less, plus you have the cooldown baked into it as well. So even if you have full cooldown reduction, it's not going to be the same as having high attack speed.
Yep. All right, next up, still moving on to the penetration items, but this is an interesting change. So first up, Demonic Grip, removed from the game.
That's gone, yeah.
But see the executioner.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure to keep that text in, even though it's like the next line.
All right, so
like,
let's talk about just Demonic Grip and the Executioner kind of in conjunction since they are related. But Demonic Grip was previously the intelligence-focused, basic attack, shred protections item.
Yes,
this has been kind of looped into the Execution. So Clumsy, talk to me about what's happening to the Executioner.
Yeah, so Execution and Demonic Grip served a very, very similar purpose, and we were starting to see a lot of people get confused on which one was more important, especially when you're building a soul and you can go intelligence or you could go strength based, and you didn't even know which one Demonic Grip or the Executioner was going. It didn't really make sense to have two items serve a very similar purpose. And then once we started getting Odyssey, it actually took us working on Shifter Shield and past that tech to make sure that we can actually build that up into the future, which is that Survivor Stash tech of now having one stat be higher than the other. So Executioner is there for both of you now. So if you're going to get strength or an intelligence build, but you want to have that protection shred, then this is the item for you.
Yeah.
And Executioner and Totem of Death both are piercing.
Yes.
So
exactly.
if you have both of them, you aren't going to get double protection shred stacks here.
Yeah. Yep.
And then from a math perspective, I might be asking you too much of a question here.
No, you're good.
But so Executioner, Demonic Grip, remove it from the god that they're putting the stacks on. Is that like additive with Obsidian Shard? So if I'm removing, let's just say 30% with Executioner, then is it plus 35%, or is it 35% of the remaining?
It's going to be of what's remaining there.
Of the remaining. Okay.
And this was mentioned on one of the Reddit threads as well, which I thought was really important to see, is that if you're going to be building, Executioner and Titan's Bane or Obsidian Shard, and Executioner actually in this case, you're going to be getting less value of the second one because there's less protections left on the enemy. That being said, it's not going to be that bad, but it's going to be something that you want to just keep in mind. If you are seeing an enemy that's getting just turbo building on protections and maybe not as so much health, you might want to double up on the percent pen here versus maybe going one of them and then going a Chin Size or Soul Reaver instead.
Cool. All right, well, let's talk about the rest of the penetration items. And chat, you will notice a trend as we start talking about Oathsworn Spear and the rest of the items in this section. But the first bullet point is probably going to be the same for all of them. Remove the percent penetration from this item, but in turn, a lot of these items are going to be seeing stat increases across all the other things that they provide. So,
and this does still have the flat prot shred on ability usage?
Yes.
Okay.
The flat prot shred. Yeah. Oathsworn Spear is one of the only ones left that has a different version of penetration.
Yeah. This and Stone of Binding, I think, are the only two that I can think of.
Yeah, and then like the Void Shard and Void Stones have a little bit on their aura as well, which we're going to get to in a bit. Oh, one last note, because I know that there's some astute players that were checking out the PTS. Executioner did have an unintentional change there where it gained attack speed based on just in general, it went from 15% to 25%. That was just an error. I think the intelligence wasn't changed. The intentional effect is the attack speed is remaining the same at that 15%, and the intelligence was actually increased to compensate, because the main difference between Demonic Grip and the Executioner actually was that Demonic Grip had a higher attack speed.
Yes.
Executioner had the lower one, so in return, you're getting more intelligence by getting the Executioner instead.
Cool. All right, so Oathsworn Spear, remove the percent pen, but increasing the strength and decreasing the recipe cost.
Yeah, so you're going to be seeing a couple places where the recipe cost is going to be changing, because Lucerne Hammer and Evil Eye now have that change with them as well. So even here, you can see the decreased recipe cost is actually leading to an increased total cost. But that's usually going to be because of the tier 2s change. And also, we took these opportunities when we removed the percent pen to just gauge where we wanted some of these tier 2s to remain. So in this case, we could have just removed the percent pen and kept the strength low and decreased the cost. But that wasn't really the goal. We wanted to make sure with a lot of these, we want to, just as we stripped away a lot of strength and intelligence previously, this was actually a pass that we always wanted to do to make sure that there was a lot more mid to high end tier high power items.
Yeah. All right, next up, we've got the Crusher. Remove the percent pen, but increase the strength, increase the cooldown rate, and there is a recipe change with those two twos.
So a lot of opportunities where, again, we took the percent pen off, but gave some power in return. In this case, we gave back a little bit of cooldown rate to just make sure that you feel a little bit of a change there. It wasn't just a strength change.
Yep.
Brawler's Ruin and Divine Ruin, on the other hand, that you're going to see, they just went a lot more premier on the power. That being said, there's an opportunity to talk about the fact that we are still looking at the anti-heal items to potentially gain some spice back, similarly to the way that they worked in Smite 1. We understand that especially now with a stat being removed, them basically just being a one stat liner with a, I don't want to call it a lackluster passive because these passives are pretty darn good.
They're very strong.
With the last anti-heal changes.
But you don't, going back to what we were talking about previously about like auras, not on this show, but on other shows, like you don't necessarily feel how impactful it is because there's not this extra visual tell that something is happening. Right. In the way that like, when, I don't even remember what triggered it, but there was the anti-heal tank item in Smite 1 that I think when somebody CC'd you, then they got the circles of like anti-heal that popped out. Contagion, right? Like that was very obvious that like it's doing something, right? That's maybe a little too obvious, but it's very obvious that it's doing something. And people generally react to and buy items more when they can tell that they're doing something, even if it subtly has a really strong effect that they just weren't noticing previously.
Right. It's like it's still the case that a lot of people think that not necessarily healing is though, but if you go build into lifesteal, they don't notice the effects of it, but over time it accumulates, especially when you're talking about that we don't have like the brawling rules of previous. You're gaining a lot more sustain over time.
Yeah. All right, so we talked about Brawler's Ruin and Divine Ruin. Heartseeker in between those two.
Yeah.
We're going to be increasing the strength and the mana, but again, the percent pen is removed.
Yep. Again, another opportunity where we didn't want to just inflate the strength, but we wanted to give it a little bit of the secondary stat as well.
Next up, Spear of Desolation. I've been hearing some inklings that this item is real good in the flash tests. So we're removing the percent pen. Int has been increased from 85 to 100. And we have increased the passive cooldown reduction from 1 second to 3 seconds for non-ultimate abilities and 5 seconds to 10 seconds for ultimate abilities.
So another one of those opportunities where we said, hey, the passive of this item is one of the more unique parts about it. The percent penetration is a heavy shift away from the strength of this item. What can we do to, make it more interesting instead? We could have just given it even more intelligence, but we wanted to use this opportunity to play around with the passives some more. And I'm not saying that this is going to be the nerf that happens to it if necessary, but I would assume that if we do want to look at a Spear of Desolation nerf, one of the opportunities we would question next would be, instead of nerfing the passive immediately, what's the right intelligence for this cost? And this is kind of just the theory behind it. Not trying to say it's immediately an overpowered item. But if we were to address it, we want to make sure that we keep the strengths of passives and actives intact. And potentially looking around at other places for nerfs.
Yeah, chat's really excited about this one. I think this is a fun one. You were doing work with it in playtest today.
Yeah, I will
not elaborate more on that, but you were doing work with it. So
it's cool to just get those, cooldown reductions and start spamming those abilities.
Because I went Chronos Pendant and then I went Spear of Desolation, and like after I got a kill, I like forgot already that my ability was up. I actually thought, because I was testing.
No spoilers.
Testing a character, and I was just like, oh yeah, wait, did I bug out? Did I just have no cooldown? Or I was like, oh no, I just got it all back really quickly. Wait, I can't.
No spoils. Come on, Clumsy.
I was testing my smite card.
I know, right?
I was revving the gas.
Necronomicon up next, going to be decreasing the cost, removing the percent pen, adding 300 mana and 5 mana regen, and increasing the intelligence from 45
so this is getting a double recipe change, I think. Killing Zone of Void Shard replaced with Thanatos and Evil Eye. So that gives it a little bit of the mana and the mana regen, but also by adding a little bit more mana and mana for the most part other than mana regen, you're getting another more synergy with like Book of Thoth and items like that. So that just gave us an opportunity there. And then Necronomicon was one of those items where like it's pretty good. It has a pretty heavy trade-off to just be careful about it, because I've seen people keep it on 0 stacks for an entire game as well. Come on. Maybe so.
All right, let's talk about Doom Orb next. Ratatouille right underneath there. And these are the last two underneath the penetration item umbrella. We're all going to talk about the void items a little bit later, but they're under the general items.
That's right. Doom Orb was another opportunity where we didn't want to just change the percent pen and give other stats to it, but it's another one where we wanted to specialize it away from Gem of Focus. Both of those were, int items with some level of maneuverability, gaining different amounts of movement speed based on it, and they they just didn't have a distinct purpose. So we doubled down on Gem of Focus and Tekokage, and we wanted to remove that from Doom Orb to make sure that, hey, this is the premier int item that can gain even more int over time. It's going to get a pretty large amount. And yeah, that's why we even increased the stat count too.
Yep. And then Rod of Tahuti, last but not least, removing the percent pin, increasing the int, the mana, the passive intelligence conversion, and there's a recipe change as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think the big line there is the 20% to 25% int conversion feels pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Who is Tahuti? Is Tahuti an Egyptian god? Is that? I've never thought about this before.
Yeah, it's no Bancroft's Talon, that's for
it's
sure.
It's no Bancroft's
Right,
Talon.
yeah.
Bancroft's Talon is a global agenda reference.
Yes, it is.
But
yes, that's right. Chaos said it correctly. Tahuti is though. It's another name for those.
Okay.
Yes.
There you go. I was like, who is? So he's got a book and a rod.
Yep.
Exactly.
Man.
All right.
This is, I think, before he even came out, I think both of those items existed.
Yeah, but we've been getting a lot of feedback for a long time that mages have felt underpowered.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that there's a lot of changes here that should help mages feel more, in the conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit overpowered in some cases. But I think that like it's a good shift for the game and for the meta, and we can see how it feels. And then, as we said, like this is phase 3 of the item changes.
Technically phase 3 out of 3, but that doesn't mention the balance and the iteration that we want to do, and just more specialization we want to do across the board, and just even revisiting these ones as well.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of interesting stuff to experiment with this update,
Yeah.
especially if you're a mage player.
I know we haven't even gotten into the general item changes.
Yeah.
And there's some spicy stuff.
Oh
in here
yeah,
as
that's
well.
for sure.
So,
I was like rechecking all of these ones, but I forgot about all the general item changes.
So
This was fun stuff.
let's talk about Gauntlet of Thieves first, just because getting a pretty significant shift. This was kind of your premier. I'm going to stack this and get a lot of protections. This item is being shifted to be more of a max health focused item. So the new passive is being shifted to grant max health and on stacks and bonus max health whenever you get it fully evolved. So
what's
every
40
stack
times
gets 15, and then
a lot
at
of
max
numbers.
stacks you get 200. I believe the net is just 1,000 max health.
That sounds right.
From no Gauntlet of Thieves to fully stacked and evolved Gauntlet of Thieves.
40 times 15 is 600, so it's 800, and then there's probably some base max health
Yes,
on it
there
too.
is.
So that's a lot of health.
Oh yeah.
That's a lot of health. So one of the main things we wanted to do here is we were always going to be in this weird arms race between which one's better, Gauntlet of Thieves and Prophetic Cloak.
Yeah.
Or just get both, right? And yes, they have a gameplay difference in the way that you stack them, but that didn't mean they were healthy to coexist in the same gameplay space. So once again, in terms of the specialization pass, which is more of what we're seeing now, we wanted to separate those two. If you want a lot of protections, well, you're going to have to play into that Prophetic Cloak gameplay, or just buy protection-based items. You don't have to opt into that gameplay if you don't want to. Just buy individual items that can get you there. Or Gauntlet of Thieves, well, this is now the classic. I want a lot of health, and I want to play with my team in order to get that. That being said, as I'm sure everyone is well aware, Gauntlet of Thieves stocks went up, which means health goes up, which means Chin Size and Soul Reaver are now even better.
I
against
see
it.
chat saying Kins go burr now.
Yes.
So
But that's what I love about this new system, right? Is that like if you see somebody building max health, then Kins does go burr.
Yeah.
But if the person decides instead to go prophetic and go heavy into protections, then Kins isn't going to do that much against them.
Yes,
right? Like,
exactly.
So there's like you can't just blindly build Kins every game and be like, cool, I'm going to go burr, right? Like you have to think a little bit about like how do I want to go burr, right?
Especially
like,
because like even if they are doing that and are feeling strong against that player, but that means that Chin Size is being built and that person's just not doing nearly as much damage against that squishy character as well. So now it's again, this is a team-based game. That's one of the things that makes it so great and so hard at the same time. It's like if you see that enemy win Chin Size because your ally win Gauntlet of Thieves, well then you as an assassin have more of an opportunity to actually go gank them or go kill them because now you're going to be more effective against them. It's those synergies and those team-based things that are going to be pretty important to keep in mind, because I know when it comes to these item changes, when it comes to penetration, when it comes to all this, there's a lot of theory crafting and paper math going on. But when you put everything in a 5v5 environment for the most part, of course in Conquest or even in Arena and other game modes as well, everything changes just immediately.
Yeah.
As soon as you put one other teammate, one other enemy into the category, you just can't paper math. It's just not the same.
yeah. It's
That
really
being
cool.
said, again, I'm not saying we got the numbers perfectly anywhere or everywhere. We're going to keep iterating.
Yes.
But that's the goal.
Yeah. All right, next up, let's talk about Gemma Focus and Tekokage, kind of in conjunction here because they are kind of related and similar. So Gemma Focus, we've reduced the cost and increased the intelligence. The passive has been shifted. When you use an ability, gain a stack of momentum, granting 4% movement speed for 6 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. This passive is now mutually exclusive with Tekokage.
There were just opportunities where they had a very similar gameplay purpose that we wanted to just stay away from.
Sorry, Pom Pom's in chat. He says, "Nah, Matt's perfect. We nailed it." Sorry,
without a doubt.
First try.
Yeah, just wrap it up. Yeah. Balance is solved. So Gemma Focus is actually going to be one of the ways these items are different is Gemma Focus has a reduced cost, right? And then this is going to be the int based one. So if you're going Tekokage, you're obviously going to have a strength based build, and you want to have that movement speed that's now increased. I feel like we also removed something else from the passives. I wanted to make sure that's in there as well. Use an ability to gain a stack of momentum gaining. Yeah, because it's just going to be gaining the movement speed from the passive now. And so then the other thing is we weren't super stoked about those like shared hybrid builds where you end up just going both of those and gaining even more movement speed than intended. Having these be unique with one another means that you can't double up on that effect. Yeah. So that's never going to be quite the right strategy.
So chat does have an interesting question here. Why did we not merge these in the way that we merged Executioner?
Great question. So that's one of those opportunities that we actually discussed that in the design team, and we said, hey, there is every opportunity to conflate items and just have them have a singular purpose. But there's also opportunities to do kind of the opposite, which is, again, Gemma Focus is the reduced cost one. It's $23.50. It's a cheaper item where you're getting less out of it. It is a less, effective or efficiency-based item, while Tekokage is actually a higher gold cost and just gives you a lot more for it. They don't live in the same like power curve range. You might want to go Gemma Focus early because it's a lot cheaper, but then maybe it's something that you sell later on because you're at full build and you're getting 3k pots and you just don't think it's as effective. So basically they live in a different design space while Demonic Grip and the Executioner lived in the same design space.
Yep. And for people just joining, like the reason why we added the name Momentum to this was to make it so that they grant you the same thing so that you can't buy both and get
like
double
piercing
stacks.
and shattering, similar. Yeah.
And it also just means that like if we ever want to add more things with momentum, piercing, and shattering, it allows us to do it via the keyword rather than saying like, hey, this item no longer stacks with A, B, C, D, and E. It's just cleaner.
All right. Next up, Mystical Mail. This is an interesting change because we built some new tech for this item.
So we did
build
build some new tech. They're going to see a little bit with Mystical Mail. Void and the Void Shield, Void Stone items, is that, and this came from the ambassadors, which I think we all thought was a good idea, which is some of these items are kind of just like, especially the aura-based items, they're kind of just too free for what they do. Let them be strong, but let them be strong with a purpose to them.
Yes.
So all three of these, you're going to see a very similar base thing, which is they have a good effect, but it gets better, and for a Mystical Mail sense, gets better to almost kind of like what it used to be, but at a closer range. Yeah. But if you're further away from that character that has these items, it's not nearly as effective. It's not nearly as frustrating. So do something with intention.
Yes. So
I didn't know that had changed. I've been building that in playtest.
The damage now scales by distance. So the closer you are, the more damage Mystical Mail is going to be doing. Yep. And as the enemy gets farther away, that damage is going to fall off.
And as I think Intersect noted as well, which I think was a very astute too, is that it makes these items not nearly as strong on ranged characters because they can't just flex in and get the maximum benefit out of it.
All right, Phoenix Feather up next. We're going to be decreasing the health and the magical protections, but the active effect has been shifted. So now you're going to fire out 3 pulses, healing you for 100 HP plus 10% of your missing HP, and dealing true damage equal to your level plus 3% of your max health from items to enemies within 3.2 meters around you.
Yes, and I didn't word this correctly because I think... So I just have to remember, or I'm going to say something that's just incorrect, which can happen. I think the cooldown reduced as well, because one of the things that happened there is we decreased some stats to make it a little bit less efficient. We changed around the active, but we can get to that in a second. But the cooldown also decreased by quite a bit to make up for the stat shift. Again, kind of leaning a little bit more into the active effect. And then about the active effect itself, it's just kind of a little bit more interesting, the fact that it happens over time. It's something that you could react to a bit more versus something that just happens more immediately. We saw that effect be pretty successful by splitting out the damage with Pridwin. This is just something where like it's surprising how much this can do and how much it can heal in one burst that's kind of unreactable.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, people in chat saying this with thieves. They're already starting to cook a little bit. Yeah.
That's right.
And there's other items that go off of it too, right? Like Circe's, right? So like you can Circe's in to do damage based on your max health, and then you can do this to do more damage based on your max health, and like lots of fun stuff.
Next up, we've got Rage. A little bit of a shift here. It's kind of a net nerf. We're going to be decreasing the critical strike chance per stack from 5% to 4%, but we're going to be increasing the max stacks from 4 to 5. So just going to take you one extra kill to get that fully stacked Rage.
A super kind of light tap on the wrist. We are very well aware that Rage is pretty good. Its strength is on the lower side for an item. But that being said, if you can get to around 50% crit chance, you're still pretty happy. We just want that investment to take a little bit more time, to be a little bit more, risky. That being said, if we need to look at this again to just decrease its efficiency more, we can. But this was a step to make sure that it felt like an investment rather than something that just happened too quickly.
Yeah. Up next on the list is Shifter Shield. We're going to be removing the mana from this item, increasing the max health again, though.
Yeah, so this is a little bit more of stat shifts. One, to just make sure it didn't feel like it had a little bit of everything, because I believe, if I remember correctly, it has double prots, it had health, and it had mana.
Yeah.
That's just a little bit too much of everything. And then also, this was the premier place where Survivor Sash, with the new iteration, made sense to bring it back in.
Yep. All right, next up, Sunbeam Bow. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, Sunbeam Bow.
Multiple iterations, multiple spots in the meta, but it's going to be seeing a significant change here. We're removing the strength, intelligence, and mana regen from the item, decreasing the attack speed,
Yeah, exactly.
The passive damage scaling has been increased from 20% of basic attack damage to 30%, and then the passive now has an additional effect. You gain 40 strength or 50 intelligence, depending on which stat is higher.
Yeah, so another opportunity for us to bring in kind of that, I'll call it hybrid or shifting power, right? Because previously it had strength, then it had strength and int, so that more different types of gods can utilize them. But something that we have to be very careful of is when you give both those stats together, it makes the gods who want to play into that hybrid play style just that much stronger. We're even seeing that conversation with the Fire Giant rocks as well.
Yeah.
So that being said, here we had the opportunity to go back and say, hey, like, this is actually just a strength premier item, and you're only going to see that for kind of strength attack speed builds. But we weren't satisfied with that. So like this is actually, I believe, what started the conversation of let's play around with that shifting power. What would that take, and where else can we add that in? And Sunbeam Bow felt like the premier example of, like, we don't want to take this away from everyone. It's a pretty cool gameplay. What would we need to do to make sure that, one, it can be this shifting power item, and two, it feels like there's a little bit more of that power on the active effect back again versus just kind of on the stat spread. Yeah. So Sunbeam Bow is the attack speed going down. It's obviously not a ton, but it's going down to 10%, and that's because we didn't want it to be its own enabler. We want you to go this item and go more attack speed with it. Similarly, actually, I think we had a note here to discuss that we had conversations from the community, or I think even from the ambassadors, talking about how they might want it to be, instead of mana drain, be mana per attack, so that way you can kind of build more mana into it.
Yeah,
but that also makes it even worse with attack speed. You're actually, it's like an anti-synergy with itself. So there's a pro and there's a con there. I think we wanted the opportunity to go, hey, no, we want you to build a lot of attack speed. We want you to be able to do more if you synergize with this item versus actually trying to counter it in a different way and being penalized in a different way.
Cool. We already talked about Tekko Kage. Sorry, I copy-pasted it to move it next to Gem of Focus and forgot to delete the initial line. But Void Shield and Void Stone, let's talk about both of these items in conjunction. So passive effect shift, we kind of mentioned it when we were talking about Mystical Mail, but these passives now kind of scale with distance and range.
Exactly. Kind of similar effect that we were talking about, like you said. We wanted to make sure that we were still happy with the aura-based. These allow either the bruisers or even the tanks to kind of splash into these and make the enemy feel like they're being disrupted. Make your allies really feel like they're gaining a little bit more efficiency out of this, similar to Stone of Binding. But we didn't like just how easy it was to splash and to affect everyone in a team fight. So now it's like, hey, I'm the tank or I'm the bruiser, whatever it may be. I want to hit you. Everyone else, this is the time for you guys to know also this is the person who you should be hitting.
Yeah. This is where we want to get active.
Exactly.
Sure. We've got a couple of starter item changes as we round out the list for items. Bluestone Brooch and Bumba Spear. Bluestone up first, going to be decreasing the damage from 120 to 100 over 2 seconds. And then we also fixed an issue where the repeat hit damage from this item was doing 2/3 damage instead of half.
Clumsy's
like, did I write this right?
Yeah, I'm now thinking. Chat can correct me because I may have forgotten to update the description, but was the previous range on Void Shield and Void Stone also 8.8? Because then theoretically that should be the new 50%. Because that's the middle ground one, when it increases to the 8.8 at the max range. I'll just double check that.
And 8.8 meters is just the actual distant conversion of SMITE 1 units.
Yes.
Which is it's what we use everywhere. We measured it out, and that's what it is. That's
What's
why
that?
it is. Chat's like, why 8.8 meters? It's like the same as whatever it's 20 units or whatever the range was in SMITE.
What? Yeah, I know the math, but I can't do it in my head.
Yeah. Bluestone.
So I'm gonna revisit. So note to self: revisit those radiuses just to make sure I messed it up or didn't mess it up. Bluestone brooch. Okay, yeah. So the last two items we just wanted to do. So honestly, these are just like housekeeping lights balance of Bluestone brooch and Bumba spear. Dummy good stats show they are extremely strong items. We didn't want to put them into hot fixes because they didn't feel like it was that necessary. But in a main patch, these were the two items that kind of stood out. Both of these were exceptionally overperforming out of the other starter item upgrades, and we just wanted to make sure they hit them with a light nerfs. In fact, Bluestone Brooch had actually a bug to it, which was I think probably based on previous balance, the subsequent damage was always meant to be half, but it was actually doing 2/3. So it was always doing a little bit too much damage. That being said, those numbers aren't enough of a nerf, so we hit the base as well.
Pompon says that 8.8 meters is the ranged basic attack range. So
Yes.
if you're curious how long that feels, that is that distance. So.
Sweet. All right. Well, that is it for items. That was a lot. Again, this is kind of phase 3 of the item specialization pass. Lots of interesting changes that players are going to be able to play around with. I'm super excited to see the kind of build variety that shapes up once OB9 goes live. I've already been seeing some cool stuff in the flash test.
Yeah.
But, let's talk about God balance, shall we?
Sure. Yeah, we're not done.
I know, right?
But wait.
Athena up first. Going to be seeing a buff. Confound going to be decreasing the cooldown, and then Defender of Olympus decreasing the cooldown on Athena as well.
Yeah, so for the item balance, we had a lot of like specific goals in terms of specialization and in the final arc of pass. For God balance, we just wanted to look at opportunities to mostly buff characters that were underperforming. So almost all of these were generally not doing so hot for the majority of the player base. Athena was absolutely right there. One opportunity we had was the cooldown reduction because she just had some long cooldowns. Not just on the ulti, but 18 seconds. Sure, the taunt is good, but wow, that's long. And even 16 seconds is pretty long. But I know that as soon as we go even further, people are going to be like, you were crazy. The taunt effect is too good. And she's obviously got a dash to set it up. And we also want to make sure if your effects are good, that might be okay. Build some cooldown reduction to kind of help to splash that in there, right? To help out.
All right, Bellona up next, going to be seeing a buff to Scourge and Eagle's Rally. Scourge clarified that the heal scaling from this ability is only physical protections.
Yes.
We increased the heal scaling from 5% to 10% of physical
I believe in game this says just protections, but it has only ever been based off of physical protections. So we clarified that, and then we gave that a bit of a buff because it was honestly pretty low. The base healing was pretty much all that mattered.
And then Eagle's Rally, just seeing a damage increase.
Yeah, I mean, it does a lot of good stuff, and it's a movement ability, but 150 base damage, just a little bit sad.
You can bump up just a little bit.
Yeah, it's like adding a plus 70 is like sounds like a huge number, but from 150 it had some room to grow. And you can see the end game amount is basically exactly the same because we didn't see that being the issue.
Cool. Nemesis up next, going to be seeing a buff to Swift Vengeance, increasing the damage of each dash, and then Slice and Dice increasing the center damage.
Yep. So again, the damage on each dash, so it's only a 10 damage increase, but since she gets 2 dashes, and if you commit to both, you're getting a 20 damage per rank there. Center Slice and Dice, just a little bit more scaling there. Nemesis has definitely been slightly underperforming, especially across some of the other assassins that have been added to the game, and just with the item builds that are currently there.
Yeah. Chat has been asking for a Nemesis buff today a lot. So
have they?
Is that what?
Nice.
We did that. So.
We made them happy.
It's like we planned it.
Yep.
Up next, Ra, going to be seeing a buff. Searing Pain, increasing the true damage dealt from 5% to 8% of the target's max HP.
Yeah.
Those Ra ults going to be hit now.
Those are like the easiest thing to hit, and Ra stocks have absolutely actually been pretty low, even though he's felt pretty good, especially with the aspect and everything, and the +1 to his 2. But yeah, let this hurt, but let this hurt a little bit more against healthier targets. I think there's something more interesting about that than just being a deletion for squishies.
For sure. Ram up next, going to be seeing a shift, aspect of precision. The Astral Strike, which is the one, going to be decreasing the slow max stacks from 3 to 2 and decreasing the slow duration. And then base Ram, Astral Strike, increasing the bonus damage strength scaling from 10% to 15%.
Yeah, so this is one of the aspect opportunities where when we analyzed it, his aspect has been doing pretty well, but base Rama has not been doing so good. That's just and this we didn't have the split Astral Strike effects, and we just kind of built that here. So we took this opportunity to kind of readdress that, make sure they weren't coupled so hard together, so that we can do stuff like, hey, the aspect of Precision's Astral Strike is now just generally a little bit weaker, especially with the slow, because that was, even with a little bit more attack speed, you're basically just perma-slowing people, and it being onto 3 stacks as well means that slow was kind of just getting a little bit too aggressive.
Susano up next, going to be seeing some buffs. Wind Siphon increasing the damage, and then Typhoon increasing the max damage.
Yeah, so some light touches here. Wind Siphon, you can see the damage is loaded towards the end, where it's just the base damage that's increasing over time. You're not seeing a scaling change there, which would have probably been a little bit too much, especially with how easy this ability is to hit. So 250 for late game isn't really that crazy. Typhoon, same thing here. We didn't want to change the scaling. We increased the base across the board, and kind of front loading that on this case because the damage was pretty low here. Susano is one of those characters who we did buff previously, and we know we need to be quite careful for when he's too strong, but his numbers deserve maybe even another bullet point, although I can tell chat's already pretty upset by seeing where Susano and buff put together.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on Susano. We know he is. It's very easy for Susano to tip the scale, so we'll keep an eye out for sure.
This one's also pretty interesting too, because I feel like a lot of people. I'm pretty sure when I first mentioned a Thanatos buff, even Alex was just like, "That's scary," because he's Thanatos in SMITE 1 and SMITE 2. Just in general, his play style and the execute from range, it's always kind of like a pub stompers game. Heck, I play Thanatos in ranked because I have fun, and I know enemies who don't know how to play against him just will suffer.
Oh yeah.
That being said, his stats were really low, and not just for the aspect as well. That being said, we wanted to make sure that the aspect was slightly better than the base, the non-aspect. So we hit the Harvester of Souls specifically in the non-aspected version, but gave him just a buff overall to his other abilities because he everywhere needed some love.
Yeah. So the Harvester of Souls increased the minion kill heal up to 10%. Death Scythe decreased the cooldown, and then Soul Reap increased the silence. So few Thanatos buffs.
Yeah.
Hopefully he performs a little bit better. Ymir up next, and I believe this is our last god change.
That's right.
Our boy Ymir, Frostbite, the passive, now applies a 10% attack speed debuff to enemies affected.
Yeah, that's right. So not only are you going to be dealing less damage to Ymir and taking more damage from Ymir, but you'll also just generally have less attack speed for everyone, right? So it's not something that just applies for you against Ymir. We wanted to look at Ymir in a way that, like, we in a spot where we haven't kind of hit him before or given him a buff before, and we didn't want to just give him more damage. I think as Kilgoon will also know from his playtest against us that he doesn't need more damage, or if he does, it doesn't need to be too obviously too direct. We want to give him a little bit more utility, and the passive was the best place to do so.
Yeah.
And we think this is pretty unique. I mean, he's kind of slowing people down. It makes sense that he's kind of attack speed slowing people as well.
Yeah.
Chat, Ymir jungle.
Give him the build,
fun.
Kilgoon.
Yeah,
You got to put it in God Builder whenever it goes live.
Oh, I suppose I could. Yeah.
That way people could search your build.
Yes, they could.
Sweet. Well, that was a lot of item balance changes, a lot of God balance changes. I believe the plan is for us to flash test again for OB9 right after the show. I'll have to double check with Kabir, but I know for those who didn't get a chance to play yesterday, you will be able to have another opportunity to hop in and play with OB9 because you've got Guan Yu, Kali aspect, Guan Yu aspect, plus all these item and God balance changes as well for players to look forward to and try out.
Yep.
Yeah,
and
cool.
I would say, like, chat always is asking about a lot of different gods and why they're getting buffed or nerfed or not touched or I think that there's a lot of item changes in this update which will affect a lot of the gods that were not otherwise directly buffed or nerfed. Right. And when you change too much at once, it can be hard to figure out what the outcome is going to be, right? So I think that hopefully a lot of the people that they're asking about will see some changes based on the item changes that we talked about previously.
Yeah, and also for those who generally have been keeping attention to, for the main patches versus hotfixes, you tend to see more of the nerfs and the hotfixes for gods.
Correct.
So we don't usually do those in the main patch. If we do, they're for a specific reason for that week, because we do patch changes in balance basically on a weekly basis now. So definitely keep attention to when we do hotfixes and check out those notes because they happen quite often.
Yeah. We have had this one chatter who has been asking for a while about why have we not changed anything about Mulan in a long time. And my understanding is that because Mulan is doing fine by our statistics and by what we see in high-level games, right?
Mulan's generally been doing pretty good. She was one of those warriors who did even better with the kind of hybrid proc builds that a lot of people were building into. So maybe I'm not going to say you guys were playing her wrong, but like I know there were a lot of oppressive Mulans with Mystical Mail, with Bluestone, with Pred Winds. Like that's, you know, she excelled at being one of those hybrid warriors. Now with a lot of those things pulled away from a lot of different characters, we're going to, again, like Kilgoon said, we're going to need to readdress who needs buffs and how to make sure that we don't just make them from amazing to terrible to oppressive just back to back in the same patch. So Mulan's probably just okay. She's probably just fine. She's probably just fine the way right now. Let's see how these item changes affect all of these gods, and we'll be back here in a few weeks to do this right again, right?
Yep. Sweet. Well, we got about 15 minutes left in the show, so let's go ahead and open it up for a short Q&A before we open things up for our next Open Beta 9 flash test. So, chat, I know we talked about a lot, so if you have any questions about god balance, item balance, sorry, I can't talk, any of the specialization stuff that we're kind of wrapping up with phase 3 and Open Beta 9, let's get to it.
I saw this question asked a couple times. It was, why does Bellona only scale with physical prots instead of both? And I will answer with what I think it is, and then you can tell me what you think it is. So it is interesting when gods have pros and cons, right? And at a high level, like, it is interesting to think I might want to pick Bellona into a more physical damage comp because she is better and her kit synergizes better against physical damage. If every god is good at everything, then the game feels very samey and it's not as interesting. And this is one way of differentiating and creating some subtle differences between, you know, what a character is good against and what they're good at.
No, that hits the nail on the head. I mean, she disarms. She has block stacks for basic attacks. She is a very prot heavy, like, defensive character. We don't want to just give her everything.
Yeah.
Okay, her 2 now silences. Are you happy?
Oh, Jesus. What was? I remember you were testing like a really weird.
It was. I don't mind sharing it. Bellona, one of Bellona's earliest iterations of her aspect, it was actually basically an entirely different aspect. Was that so? It was for support Bellonas, but it was that her 2 on the spin pulled enemies inwards, but then the entire ability just did a lot less damage. But as we saw with adding CC, you would just do that regardless because more CC equals better.
Bobby says that most items are becoming just actives or passives. Have we thought about adding more stat stick items?
I love when Bobby's here and he's wrong. I'm joking. No, we love you, Bobby. Yes, there are still statistic items out there, and they tend to be some of the most efficient ones because the way the item store is balanced is that actives give you the least efficiency in your stats. Passives give you even less efficiency in your stats. You tend to have more base stats according to that. Stat sticks give you the most efficiency because they don't have passives or actives. So that just tends to be that if you want to play full stat sticks, if you want your Wish Granting Pearl, your Yogi's necklaces, they're just the most efficient items. You do that to the entire item store, that's the right way to play the game. That's just factual. So we want to be very careful on just adding statistics. Plus, that just, yes, I could argue devil's advocate myself on it's good to have items like that so that everyone can have kind of safe items to buy. That being said, there are already kind of items like that where the efficiency on the passives or the actives are not their strong suit, and we did that specifically for this reason. So for example, even like Book of Thoth, Transcendence, Dev Gloves, like we were talking in the Ambassador Discord, maybe they stack too easily, or Jotuns, and certain other items, like they're just good to have. They're kind of like no-brainers if you don't know what to build. They're probably pretty good. They're fine. You don't need to think about it too much. But that being said, the item store is one level of specialization to allow us to flex to maintain still being a MOBA. If everything was too similar, like kind of like again we were talking about with Bellona, there would just be a lot less skill expression, and the skill floor would go down, the skill ceiling would go down, and that is a whole different version of the game, which is not a bad thing, but we just want to be careful doing that too often.
There was a couple of people were asking about the Artisans program. I think we're going to contact those people later this week. Is that still the plan?
I believe so. I believe that's the plan.
And then I will note as well, like even if you aren't accepted, right? Like we do also have the community merch program now, which I believe is pretty much accepting everybody that wants to make
just
community
about
merch. So if you want to do 2D stuff that's Smite related and sell merch based on it, like that is something that you can do even if you are not accepted into the artisan program. So. Are Kali aspect autos supposed to go through walls, or is that a bug?
I don't believe they're meant to go
think
through
they-
walls.
yeah,
Pawn, are you
that
still
would
here?
be- Yeah, Pawn, are you
would be
watching?
Surprised. I can see why maybe they would, because the 2
Bug,
dots.
okay,
There
all
we
right,
go.
okay.
Easy peasy. Love that.
I'll go fix it. There we go.
Pawn was
Live
like
game
having a
development
good
here.
time. And you're like, all right, fine. Please. Nice. All right. Yeah, live game development. Exactly.
Let's see here.
Why no Loki aspect buff? Okay, so we're working at a pretty fast pace to make sure that we can get a lot of awesome stuff to you guys. The question we always need to ask ourselves for everything, but for aspects specifically, is do we want to go back and rework old aspects, or do we want to create new ones? There are people who dislike Loki's aspect or think that it's probably not utilized, and same thing with several aspects.
Yeah.
But there are also people who may be using them. The answer currently isn't 0. There is always better ways to spend time, and there are always opportunities to go back and reflect upon what could be done better. Right now, we want to make sure that we kind of get more options out there. There's a lot of gods who don't have any aspect, and I don't want to say it's necessarily just a better use of our time to create more aspects, but it's something that we find is a little bit more important right now, is to kind of just broaden that opportunity. We don't have all the gods in the game yet. Let's make sure that we can kind of expand on what we do have, and we absolutely do have a desire to go back and look at some of the aspects, and we're still doing that. It's not like we've forgotten that. We absolutely want to, and in fact, it's almost something like we could be doing that, and I don't mind doing that, but then we have to come up with what's a better one too. And but we have this really cool idea right now. Let me just go work on that instead. It's kind of that gimmick. So yes, we do want to know. We do want to revisit some of the weaker aspects or the ones that people find lackluster. But even as we're seeing in chat right now, some people find that aspect to be interesting, and it would just be taking things away, which is always slightly problematic.
Yeah. I noticed AI and bot matches will randomly stand in place, almost like they're going AFK. Is this being addressed? Yes, we are working more on the AI over the past, week or so, and we're going to be working on it more going forward. Basically, usually what happens is that there are conflicting things that the bot wants to do, and it can't decide, and it just kind of gets stuck. So we are working on that, and we should have fixed some of the main issues that were causing that in Arena, I believe in this most recent update. But I know that they're looking at it now for like Joust and other modes. So it is something we're aware of and something we're trying to fix.
Hercules aspect is OP. Inbound, didn't I ask you to make a video to say what your thoughts on the aspects? Did you just dono wall me? Come on.
Yeah.
Get on that.
Monday on Titan Talk, you mentioned rank rewards. Can we please elaborate on the time frame? Does my current rank count for anything? Will I get rewards for my current rank, or do I need to regrind after the reset? So I believe we probably could have done a little bit better job. I think we talked about it pretty quickly.
And I was just reading off of Max's notes that I did not fully grasp.
So the plan is OB9 next Monday. There will be a soft ranked reset for the next split. Ranked rewards for this current split that has started since the beginning of free-to-play will be sent out in Open Beta 10. So wherever you're at before Open Beta 9 goes live will correspond with the rewards that you get in Open Beta 10. Okay. Sorry, I know it's a little bit confusing. The UI team just needed a little bit more time to get those rewards done for this current ranked season split.
Okay, so it's ending. I gotta hit my next rank, which I'm like 5 games away from.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Bob, you want to carry me? No, I'm joking.
Have we ever thought about putting anti-heal on Lernian bow as a base passive instead of it just being tied to the active? Or any kind of passive hunter anti-heal items?
I mean, Brawlers does exist for that. It is, 1, has a lot of strength, and 2, it is now basic attacks as well. I think in Smite 1 it was only abilities, but for right now it is basic attacks and abilities, so it is still just a good option. Lernian bow is kind of just the more interesting way to go about it if you didn't want to kind of have I want to call it like a passive gameplay, but you're hitting enemies with your basic attacks and abilities anyways. The only way to make it more passive would for it to be an aura, which Healing Ankh is there for anyway. So I would actually say if you want to not think about it and you don't want to have to use the active effect, Brawlers works completely fine for that.
Kilgoon, I've seen a lot of people asking about our next God roadmap show. I would anticipate that will happen sometime close to or after we have revealed all the gods that we have talked about to the community thus far.
That's correct.
So I can't say what I'm learning?
No.
And so somebody says, well, there's no attack speed on Brawlers. Trade-offs. That's the kind of the point of that. It's like, do you want a lot of power and do you want or strength, and do you want to be able to do good anti-heal on your attacks, right? Like, that's a trade-off versus getting more attack speed. Like,
just my answer is buy an Odysseus bow then if you want both.
Yeah, together they add up to
a lot of things.
Odysseus bow also just does a lot of damage. If you're not building it, please build it. It's so good. It's really good. We should put 1% attack speed on Brawlers. How is Guan Yu performing in the flash test? I would say it's always hard to get actual great data from flash testing because it's a relatively small player population. Usually we get better data on just raw feels feedback and if there's any like bugs or issues that people run into. But like pure balance is hard to ascertain.
I think Pawn, and you're here so you can correct me, but I remember you said it this morning. You actually made some balance changes to Guan based on the PTS feedback as well. So we're still keeping an eye on that. I think the idea was less in scaling on the aspect to make sure that felt like the correct support oriented approach versus it just being the right answer all the time for an int Guan. So that way you have strength Guan playstyle, int Guan playstyle, and then aspect Guan playstyle.
Yep. Pawn says halved damage into the intelligence scaling on aspect.
Yeah. So we definitely are utilizing that as an opportunity to make changes, but and
I know Pawn's been doing some just general feels fixes on Guan Yu as well. I know we got to report that, canceling his ultimate felt a little bit weird if you're trying to do it instantly, and some of that stuff he's been working on and fixing up. So shout outs to Pawn.
Okay, I will answer this. Why did we switch from physical and magical to strength and int? My brain hates that you switch this, and I still call them physical and magical. Even Kilgoon said it during Titan Talk. So the reason why we switched it is because the damage that is being dealt by each god is set, right? Like, Guan Yu is always going to deal physical damage regardless of what stat he builds. And so we needed separate names for the stats so that it wasn't confusing. It's like, but I'm building magical power, but I'm still dealing physical damage. So because of that, we needed different terms for them. I'm an old man. Like I can't keep up with these numbers. I think in my head, I know what they are, right? I just say the wrong words a lot. And, it's obviously like strength.
It's also all the 10 years, 11 years of context of us saying the previous things and us saying those publicly as well. And not only that, but we started SMITE 2 with them being called physical power and magical power as well. So even internally in some of our tools, they're still called that way.
Whenever I'm talking about another game too, I'm like, oh yeah, they're gods, like their characters. Like I'm like, oh yeah, the paladin's gods. I'm like, no, wait, that's not.
That's why I think I just try and say characters for everything now. Or even when you say abilities, I just call them AO1, which that doesn't mean anything to a lot of people. But
Young Sonics is asking for any update on the API release. We were relatively close to having something that we were going to be able to release, but then we decided to rework the way that some of the data was stored in our backend so that it was more accessible for us to be able to pull like match stats. And because of that, like the API was then going to have to change shortly thereafter. So we were like, let's finish this arc of work and then update the API and then we'll release it. So maybe sometime soonish, but I know it's been a while. I'm not going to give you a hard date, but we were making progress towards it, and then unfortunately we ran into this. So
more starter items when? Well, I'm just going to answer that with one day. One day we'll look at some more of those. We added some more. We added Vampiric Shroud.
Yep.
It's we know that there's more that we can add, but there's also opportunities for us to like flex into what we could do. Kind of like you said yourself, Excalibur. It could be something brand new that we haven't done before. It's just we had this huge item past an arc of stuff to do. We'll then move on to what's next. And we already talked about how we want to make anti-heal items a little bit more interesting again. There's a never-ending amount of different opportunities for us to look at. And starter items is one of those ones that we'll either do with time or we'll do when we have a good idea. It's just not the highest priority. Also, clearly we want food back, right? Like,
Yeah.
Who doesn't want Bao back?
Oh, I need my Bao, right? Let's see here. Where has my grass gone? Missing on console. I believe it's a bug. I think it occurred with the jungle updates, but not sure. I haven't heard anything.
I have not heard about that. I can take a look. I have them all sitting on my desk, but I have not noticed that.
I know we've had the Baron aspect that was being like temp worked on a while ago in PTSs. That was one of the questions here. That was just one that we knew we weren't going to ship. We wanted some more time to cook it. We kept keeping it on in flash test and PTS. I believe for this time we actually finally decoupled it, so it's not there anymore. We just haven't had the opportunity to go back and discuss the what we actually wanted to do for Baron's aspect. I know there's a lot of good ideas out there. There's a lot of good ideas for a lot of great characters right now. So we just haven't had the time to go back to it, and when we do, we will. But he's not the next one. Like that one will come back in when we'll just have to wait until it does.
Sweet. Well, we are at 2 p.m., so it's time for one more question. Man, oh, wow. I guess the lights are picking up our audio.
Wait, what?
Hey,
Party time.
It's a party in here.
Or like he's just outside with like a little switch.
Right.
Just
little remote changing the colors. Quick Alani check before one more question. I've got Orange Kiss.
Cherry twist.
Good stuff.
friend.
Yeah.
We need to. There we go. Just in frame.
There we go.
Yeah.
Friend.
Let's see here. In regards to item specialization, is there going to be sort of a relic pass, including but not limited to further changes to Blink and Sunder? Well, Sunder just got nerfed.
Well, was that a question for me? I was hiding. Like,
Yeah, Clumsy's like, can I back up? Yeah. Or just general
What's
thoughts
the
about
question
it.
again? You said things I didn't want to hear. And
I
just
know,
blocked it
right?
on my
You just
memory.
blocked it out. Relic specialization, similar to the item specialization pass.
Relics have been something that we want to discuss and how we want to approach them next, or if we want to at all. It's definitely one of those ones that, like, yeah, I think there's opportunities there for us to do something more interesting, or to, find more opportunities or different relics and whatever they may be. For example, one of the reasons why Sunder stocks went up is because Blink stocks went down, and those are the only two offensive-based relics, so it kind of makes sense that happened. So, for example, do we want to create a new offensive-based relics? Are offensive-based relics even fun? Do we want to find other opportunities there? We will be looking at that. It's not the next thing on our list, and it's probably one of the... I would argue it's probably one of the most important things that we want to make sure not to do incorrectly, because relics affect everyone all the time in all game modes and are a fundamental, component of SMITE 2. So yeah, let's just delete them. We'll figure out what to do. It's just a topic that we take very seriously.
I have one quick one and one actual one. The quick one is, are we still adding role-specific scoreboard order? It is on the list of things that we want to do. It just we keep having other things that get prioritized over it. So it will be in the game at some point, but we just keep having other things that we would rather do first. There's another person who asked the question about, have we considered about having enclosed parts of the conquest map? And they think it would be fun. So in very early SMITE, the fire giant pit was actually a cave.
Yeah.
And so it was inside a volcano, and you went in there, and it was enclosed, and it was a cool vibe. But there's kind of two key reasons why we don't do that too much anymore. The first one is that from a spectator perspective, you can't see what the hell's going on in there, which isn't great. And the second one is that, more importantly, it doesn't play well with a lot of abilities, right? So, Thor or Thanatos are gods that go up in the air and then come down. Can they crash through that roof? Do they, can they see through it when they're up there, but they can't go through it? How do you convey that? Is that something that feels good or bad? Similarly, most walls are of a certain height in SMITE because we expect that people with leaps can leap over them. So if it's an enclosed area, then can people just not leap into there or leap out? And that would be very weird for SMITE. It might be interesting, but it just is something that we have thought has felt weird when we've played with things like that in the past.
That's a good point.
Can you imagine Aladdin wall running up an entire volcano?
or Caswell's just saying Cthulhu alt inside the SMITE 1 volcano. He's just bigger than the volcano at that point.
So those are kind of some of the reasons why we have not done that since the original Fire Giant pit. And we've played around with ideas like it, but we keep running into those same issues. So
cool. Clumsy, I think you got to choose one.
Oh, really? I thought
No, everybody has to pick a question. That's the way the
I
gimmick works.
answered
You've been on the show a lot of
question,
times. You answered one, but you didn't pick one. You have to pick one.
But what if I just don't like any of them? Choose me. You had no question there.
Choose me.
Can you add to Cernos aspect, make it where you dash through minis or jungle camps, lowers the dash cooldown a reduced amount than gods? Or add a CC effect? Yeah, I mean, I think there's been some opportunities to talk about how Cernos aspect could be a bit better. I think people like the idea of playing around with the 3 more so than playing around the melee, just because that's almost more of a unique feature that only Cernos would do here, versus if we just kept increasing the scaling of his heavy glaive, then he just becomes a really, really good melee attacker.
Yeah.
That's not the most exciting. I think leaning more towards the 3 effect could be something interesting there. I mean, watching like Fine OK's crazy videos of him just like dashing through entire team fights was definitely a lot of fun.
Sweet. Well, Kilgoon, Clumsy, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for covering all the upcoming balance changes for Open Beta 9.
Oh, I got 2 things.
Cool.
First thing, I think we're flash testing again today. So
Sweet.
please participate in the flash test if you want to try out all the stuff that we talked about. The second thing, this is unsolicited. I have not been asked to say this. Our sister studio, which is right down the hallway from us, basically, launched their video game yesterday. So it is called Dead Zone Rogue. It's a FPS co-op roguelike. It's kind of like, I don't know, what are other games? Like Gunfire Reborn or RoboQuest, Risk of Rain. Like, if you like those kinds of games, it's actually very fun. I was surprised at how fun it is. No hate on that, but it's actually a very fun game. If you like that kind of game, they are a sister studio. They're right down the hall, and a lot of nice people work there, including some people that used to work on SMITE back in the day. So it's called Dead Zone Rogue. It's on Steam only. It's not on console yet. And the demo had like 91% positive reviews when it was when it was a demo, and I think they're at like 80-something% positive right now now that it's a live product. That's like $20, and it is fun. So if you like that kind of game, obviously keep playing SMITE 2, but maybe check it out if that's your kind of thing. So Dead Zone Rogue, have fun. I just wanted to give them a little shout out because they are down the hall, and I ate a slice of their cake.
We ate their cake. Need to give
the cake was good.
I was streaming their cake yesterday. It was a lot of fun.
Sweet. Well, Jet, thanks so much for joining us for another edition of Titan Talk. Like Kilgoon said, keep an eye out on our social media channels for Open Beta 9 Flash Test news for today. But until then, we will see you all on the battleground. Have a great rest of the day. Peace.